Welcome to anyone who's out there. If you can hear me, please let me know where you're coming from. We'll get started here in a few minutes. I see a few of you out there, it looks like on StreamYard, but if you're out there on LinkedIn, StreamYard, YouTube, let me know where you're coming from. I'd love to hear, and we'll get started here in a few minutes. There's not a workbook for today. It's going to be a little more webinar style. I'm going to share some things and give my thoughts on what we're seeing with Claude in Excel and just Excel agents in general. So there is one potential file I'm going to walk through that I may share a little bit from, but it's mostly going to be a little more webinar style than normal. So just FYI, great to hear you there, Rodrigo, coming in from Argentina. Love that. Love having you here. Just pulling up the file. Sorry, I'm just running a little late compared to normal. I'll get the file up here in just one moment. Who's tested an Excel agent? And in particular, who's tested the new Claude in Excel? Would love to know if you've had a chance, and would love to hear your initial thoughts. If anyone would be willing to share that, we'll start here in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me reshare because I realized I didn't share sound, and there's a little bit of a video I want to show today. All right, perfect. All righty. We'll give it just another couple minutes here. Let people join. We should be about 20 of you out there. So looks like there's 15 on StreamYard, and I'm sure there's some on LinkedIn and YouTube. So let me know where you're coming from. Hello, Wayne. Andy, no, I haven't. Paul, good to know. Really excited for this webinar. I will say, and we'll start this training hour, couple things when we get started. But one, things are changing quick. I think we've hit kind of a watershed moment on what's possible in Excel with AI. I think you guys will agree by the end of this hour. If you don't, I'd love to know why. All right, we got Los Angeles, we got Argentina. Would love to know where any others are coming from. So put it in the comments. That always helps me to kind of get an idea on the audience. Before we get started, I'll share an Excel joke. It's one I've told before. So if you're a regular, you're just going to have to deal with it. What do cell references and gold diggers have in common? So the question is, what do cell references and gold diggers have in common? If you want them to stay in place, you have to throw money at them. All right, I didn't say it was good, but there you go. All right, so I just want to share a comment here from Rodrigo and say we got others coming. We got the Dominican Republic, Chicago, London, Salt Lake. So Rodrigo shared, he said, I tested, speaking of Claude, I think my MI anxiety is more than velocity to build, but it's amazing how with natural language, Claude could build tables and compare data. I feel a bit slow, but it could be the quantity of data. Yeah, if you have a large quantity of data, definitely your context window could run out. It could take a long time to run it. Not surprised there, but it is amazing. So let's jump into things. And please keep your questions coming throughout. Let me know where you're coming from. We got Canada, we got London, we got Vancouver, Illinois, Dominican Republic. I love it. All right. So what's funny is I've given this presentation on Excel agents, I don't know, 6 times now. And I have to redo the deck pretty much every time. Things are moving so fast. I redid this presentation today to try to capture where we're at. So hopefully I'm giving you the latest. But how many of you seen a headline like this? Rest in peace, Excel. It's over. Okay, so the person who made that video, the tool that was about, do you know what its most popular product now is? Not the spreadsheet they created, the Excel add-in. So definitely not dead there. Excel is dead. Don't waste time on formulas, functions, and complex calculations. Here are 10 AI tools that make Excel seem like a toy. Okay, that person's full of crap. All right, next. Excel is dead. AI just replaced it. And once again, Excel is dead, right? We've been hearing it for 30 years. It's still arguably the most used software in the world. That is not going to change in the short term, even with Claude. And I'll explain my reasoning and why I say that. So Excel, if anyone knows what the 3 most popular buttons are in all of software, and I'm not sure it's in this order, it's OK, cancel, export to Excel. You guys know a little bit about me. If you don't, I'll do a real quick introduction. Paul Barnhurst, known as the FP&A Guy. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah. I love to run. I love podcasting. I'm a huge Excel fan, Microsoft MVP, an outdoorsman, and have a wonderful wife and daughter. That's a picture of my daughter from, I don't know, 11, 12 years ago when she was a year old. Now she's almost a teenager. So not quite as cute, but still cute. All right. So what I want to talk about is a little bit of an overview of agents, briefly about preparing to use AI. Then I want to share a little bit from an episode of a podcast, and I'll pause at some points and talk about it. And you can ask questions of testing Excel agents, and then I'll give my key takeaway. And if we have time, there is one file I'd like to jump into and share a few things in it. So let me start with this. What I find really interesting, and I'm going to go quickly. When we talk about the spreadsheet life cycle, we have a scope, we have a plans phase, we have a build, a review, live file, right? Cycle of a model of a file. But yet, all anyone worries about is the build. That's where everybody wants AI. That's where all the attention is, the area with the least language. So the first thing I'm going to say, even though with Claude now, with 4.6, what we can do in Excel is light years compared to 6 months ago when I started testing. Remember, there's a lot of value in the entire life cycle. Don't just focus on the build. So that's the first thing I would share, just to kind of keep that in mind as we go through things. Remember, like scope, helping with recording meetings, validating assumptions, the model build, putting it together a document for the build, all those type of things AI can help us with. So just encourage people to think a little more holistically. I think some of us, and I'm not saying anyone on this call, but I think some people have this idea of, I just want to get to the point where I can push a button and ignore Excel. Maybe when AI takes over, we're not there yet, even with Claude. And I'll share my reasoning. So we don't know what an agent is. Microsoft refers to it as vibe working. The best way I would explain it is the LLM. We send a question to the LLM. There's really 4 areas that distinguish these agents. So first, what LLM they use or combination. Are they letting us pick the LLM, or are they choosing it based on what's best for the task? There are still certain cases where something other than Claude might be best. Next, each of these tools have to have some way to compress and pull the data out of the spreadsheet. Someone earlier said, hey, it ran really, really slow on large data. Well, a lot of that has to do, how do they pull the data out? How are they compressing it? Prime example, if anyone's used Power Query for a lot of data, if you're storing 5 million records in Power Query, but you haven't brought them into the grid, your file's going to be 10 times smaller than it is when you bring it into the grid. That's because of compression. These agent tools are doing a lot of the same things when they read your files, making assumptions that the formula is the same across the row or whatever when they're reading files. So the first is how they do that, how they've chose to pull it out, that they can distinguish themselves. The next is the models they choose Then what kind of instruction do they give beyond? What fine tuning are they doing? And then the last thing is, what tool are they using to do the actual work? The LLM is processing out to a tool. If you ask Claude, and I think you guys might find this interesting, we'll do this just as a demo here. Let me pull Claude up in Excel. It will actually give you the list of the tools it uses that the LLM calls, and then it reviews it and says, yep, we're good with what the work it's produced or not. And so different LLMs have different tools. That's how they'll start distinguishing themselves. Like some early on were only using Python to build a graph in Excel. Others were using the Excel object model. That's because they chose a different tool. So I'm going to log in here. It may take just 1 minute. All right. So what tools do you have available to your Excel agent? So it gives us the list. So it uses, for reading and searching, it uses something called get cell range. It also has one for a CSV file, search data. So it searches for text across the spreadsheet and finds matching cell locations. List of all charts. So it has a get all objects. So it's going to load in what all your different objects are as it's reading it. Then it has writing and formulas. Copy to, clear cell range, resize range, structure and objects, modify sheet structures. And then, it mentions external tools and code execution. And so it's really interesting that some of them will tell you directly what they're using. Some won't. Claude's pretty open with that. So just an interesting to realize, what it's using. Not something you have to know. But here, so what we're seeing today is an explosion. Look at the spreadsheet and just look at how many different tools are out there claiming to have an agent. Some better than others, most focused on modeling. I mean, think how much, if I asked each of you, and I'd love someone to volunteer, how much time a year do you spend on your forecast or your budget or on modeling in your job? Even if your job isn't primarily modeling, you work in FP&A, you work in, an accounting / FP&A, strategic finance, whatever the role may be, I'm going to guess many of you, the time you spend in a spreadsheet modeling is probably pretty close to the amount of time you spend preparing data. Right? It's huge. The market here is incredibly valuable for who can, for those couple of winners. 80% of what's on the spreadsheet will go away. Claude right now, Microsoft are my lead bets, but there'll be a few others of these that have done some unique things that will survive. There are some of them I think are pretty unique. For example, this one right here, Rose, just got acquired this week. Haven't had a chance to take them off the list. So here is something I found interesting. This is from September. So this is around when agents first came out. Copilot in Excel agent mode scored a 57% on their benchmark accuracy results. They tested on 900 different use cases. Someone had gone through and said the average human scores around a 71% on that test. That's 6 months ago. This is a few weeks ago without Claude 4.6. So this is a Kingsoft Office, which is China's version of Excel. WPS is another name you'll see. Number 1 and 4 on this list. But what I want to point out is 69.96. And I'm guessing 4.6 would be somewhere in the 70s. That means in general on benchmarks, building files, agents are now performing better than the average human. And you'll see that in the video I shared here shortly. Here they tested it on 400 use cases that they felt was more applicable to kind of modeling in the finance community. Look at how high these tools are scoring. 91% accuracy, 82. Once again, this was before Claude 4.6. So I expect these numbers to be even higher when that verification takes place, because Claude 4.6 is a leap forward. So let's just talk briefly preparing to use AI. Then I want to show a little bit of our episode we released today. So everybody's aware, if you haven't heard, I do a Mod Squad series as part of Financial Modelers Corner. That's done with In Schnorr, who's the executive director of the Financial Modeling Institute, and Giles Mel, who's a Microsoft MVP and runs Full Stack Modeler. Two of the better modelers out there. I mean, N is one of the most connected in the world, not someone easily impressed. His comment this morning about this episode is, look, everything's changed. What can be done with an agent it's a whole new world. That is a lot coming from him. He was blown away. His words, not mine. And we'll see that. So let's talk about preparing. So keep in mind, if you're going to use AI, you got to have clean data. If your data is crappy, expect crappy results, bottom line. So invest in figuring out how to clean data. You can use AI. Copilot function is great. Copilot, if you have lists that you need to compare, instead of having to do fuzzy match and write your super long X lookup with an if and look at this table and do this and do that, just let the AI figure it out. Probably get you 98% of the way there, and then you fix the last couple. Use Power Query. Use AI to assist. When possible, store raw data in normalized format, such as Microsoft Excel, tables, things like that. The way I look at it, the foundational tools for good hygiene, it's your Excel tables, it's your Power Query, it's your formula, and it's starting to be more and more using AI and Excel agents. Here's where modern Excel fluency is going, and I'll share more on this toward the end. Really, I would recommend anyone who claims to be using modern Excel and is not using Power Query, I would argue they really haven't grasped modern Excel. You need to be using dynamic arrays, you need to be using Power Query, and you need to now be using AI. So if you need to upgrade your skills, I think that's incredibly valuable for the average finance professional, or you risk being left behind. Just gonna put that out there bluntly, because you have the ability to reason on top of that structure you have with Excel agents, Copilot, Claude, Python, formulas. What we can do and what we can expect in a short amount of time is changing. The importance of knowing what we're doing to validate that work is more important than ever. And this right here, amen. Nick says, it was the greatest day in my career when I discovered Power Query. So I'd heard of Power Query at a job I had. And I don't know what that is. I'd heard of Power Pivot. Then I got to a new job and I realized, oh, this could solve a problem I have. This can work like SQL. All of a sudden I had 2 books on my desk and I did some stuff in a month that people were like, why is he working in finance if he can do that kind of stuff? All because I learned Power Query and Power Pivot, basically got me promoted. So Nick, I am with you. I am a huge believer. I preach it as often as possible. Don't care that AI is coming. AI can help us. Learning Power Query is an investment I would encourage everybody to make. I did an episode on it last week, an hour for the Microsoft Excel, or 2 weeks ago for Excel Hour. You can find that on my YouTube channel. You can find it on LinkedIn. Go ahead and watch it. It will get you started on Power Query. I'm with it. All right. So testing Excel agents. And I will share an example. I'll probably pull up a file before we do the video. So we've released, it's actually 14 episodes now. I forgot to update that. And we've tested 8 or 9 different tools. I lose track. We've done so much. It might be 8. All of us are Excel people. We're not AI pros. We've given it eSport cases, deferred revenue schedules, 3-statement models, trial balances. And so let me show you one example. And so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to take my deferred revenue schedule and I'm going to show you what it built so you don't have to sit and wait. I'm going to show one simple example here. So give me just 1 minute. All right. Where is it here? No. Sorry, give me just 1 minute to find the one I want. There we go. All right. So what I want to show so I'm going to put this up, and please keep the comments coming. I still, despite how excited I am for Claude and how I think it's changing what I'm comfortable saying, it doesn't change the fact that this is human-led. So my message, spoiler, I'm just going to give you the message right now. You need to learn Excel and modeling better, not less with AI. AI is still a magnifier. If you build a model completely with AI, and then you have to change it in a meeting and say you don't have access because there's not internet, or it goes down, or your boss asks detailed questions and you don't have the answers, you're going to look stupid. So for the time being, it's more important than ever. Kind of like his example here. AI is awesome as a DAX assistant, but you always give it context and clean everything before the data goes in Power BI. So it's a great team member. And I've been saying that for a while. But what it's like is just recently our team member got an upgrade. They went from the sophomore in college to the PhD student. And so here's an example of a deferred revenue schedule I gave it. And where I was impressed is, the formulas were much more consistent. There wasn't any very little hard coding. These first ones here and this one were, but most of them were not. What I did, this is the Copilot. Let me pull up the a different one here that I think is a much better example. I should have pulled up. So sorry about that. Let me pull up. I want the Claude one because I want you to see not 4.5 but 4.6. So here's the example, and you can see, okay, link to the front shades, pulled the formulas, did everything I want. But was really impressive is look at the documentation schedule it did. Who loves documentation? Documenting your model. If you raised your hand, you're a liar. That or you're in the wrong profession. All right, now that I've got myself in trouble and offended somebody, I'll keep going. So I gave it this revenue schedule. I gave it one prompt. It built the whole thing, got it all right, but gave me a detailed schedule. Purpose, recognizes contract revenue on a straight line monthly basis over the contract term. Data source, tells me what columns it pulled from the raw billing sheet. The period, this is all correct. Number of dealerships, what rows they're in. Then it gives me the column layout and said, here's what I did. Here's where I pulled it from. Here's the formulas I used. And it gives me the formula with an explanation. And these are right. That's the right formula. Then it went and broke down in detail the revenue recognition formula. So where you're basically saying, hey, is it greater than or less than the start and end date? Okay, divided by the number of months. And here's how we calculate the number of months. He has the months calculation, the if condition. And then it went on to explain, because I said use dynamic formulas. How are things dynamic? How does that work? Totals and validation. Not everything's perfect. Here it says dynamic, and then it talks about copying right and dragging down. Okay, it's not exactly dynamic, but I'll give it to you in the sense of a dynamic array. But it's really, really good. It's better than the documentation I would have done. So I wanted to share that example. And then what I want to do is, I think I'll share just a little bit more. So the reality is, despite all that, AI, let me just reshare the presentation, still often uses complex formulas. The prime example is, and I'd love to know, how many of you are using the formula LET today? Is anyone here using LET? AI likes to use LET a lot. If we have time at the end, I'll show an example of LET because I think it will add some value to this. The reality is, I'd say less than 5% of Excel people understand LET, if that. Yet, AI is going to use it a lot. So that's what I mean by complex formulas. It used different formulas every time for the exact same build. Getting better with that, but still doing it. Hallucinates from time to time. That's why this process is still human-led, and it's rapidly improving. So these are kind of my four warnings I get. It's probabilistic. Remember that. It can hallucinate. 98% accuracy is great, but if that 2% is on a critical decision and you don't catch it, it can be millions of dollars. Validate and audit the model, and then Remember, the more complex, the more human involvement is needed, the more oversight, the more you need to check. And this is what I mean by different formulas. So I ran that deferred revenue schedule 6 times. I ran it with ChatGPT or Copilot and ChatGPT, Copilot and Claude 4.5, and Claude 4.6. So here, I'm just going to share what Wayne shared here. Yeah, not surprised. I think we could do some of that with Python now. You could do it straight in Excel even, right? But you say without the knowledge, right? The ChatGPT can write the code. Yes, those are the type of things we're seeing. So, but what you'll notice here is, look, I got totally different versions of the same formula. These are all the deferred revenue schedules. Sometimes it's divide date diff. Sometimes it's year and month. Here it's a year and month. And so sometimes it's an if with an end statement. Sometimes it's an if with an or. And so that's still a little bit of a challenge. Claude AI did the best on it. And then here's something I recommend. If you're using Copilot or you're using Excel in general, I think even with Claude, is Brian, if anyone knows who Brian Jones is, and I'm actually going to go to the post, so it'll be a little easier to read. I can enlarge it on my screen. Give me just 1 minute here. Sorry, I got to switch. So they're on separate windows. He shared a post. He says, one simple pattern that dramatically improves Excel Copilot outcomes. Create a worksheet called Skills and specify the behaviors you want Copilot to apply while analyzing and building in your workbook. Your preferred chart style, formatting conventions, analytical approach, even writing voice. Copilot will use that as additional instruction content, and you can even ask it to draft the skills sheet for you. And so he did a demo here. I added guidance to produce economist-like charts, minimal, consistent, and publication ready, and then he gave some screenshots. I think they're good. There are some things I don't love about the charts, but what you're going to notice is if you compare here, the economist style, right? Did a really good, made these a lot cleaner by adding that skill sheet. So we went from this to this. So I would add, and I know we're being asked to learn a lot, but starting to think about how you can develop skill sheets and what that means is an important skill along with learning AI. It's something I need to dig into. I haven't created a skill sheet yet. I've known about them for a while. It's been on my to-do list. So when I say this, I'm not just saying, hey, all you need to do this. These are things I need to do to get better. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to take a few minutes and show, and we may pause it at a couple points, show a video. One second to get to the right point. All right, so we'll start here in just 1 second. Yeah. So I want, and ask questions go, I want you to see a test, and I'm going to set this up real quick. So Inschnor is the executive director of FMI, as I mentioned. He tested one of his cases. Everybody who knows me knows I'm a big fan of the advanced financial modeler test to validate your modeling skills. He gave it the Henderson model, which is one of the cases. And he's going to walk through in detail how it performed. You can watch the full episode out on YouTube. We gave it other cases as well. This is about 18 minutes long. I'm probably going to speed it up a little bit from the 1 to maybe a 1, 2, 1, 3, so it doesn't take quite as long. And I'll probably pause it at a few questions to give some thoughts, but I really think this is worth seeing. And really pay attention to In's advice here and watch how good of a job it does, because I think it will make you realize what I've been talking to, that things are changing rapidly. And I might fast forward it just a little bit. He goes through that for a little while. So here's what you get for the test, your data. All right, let me figure. I just saw the note, no sound. Let me figure out what's going on. Give me 1 second here. Let me stop sharing. Figures, just my luck. All right, let me try resharing. I don't know why my sound tab is on, so it should share. Hopefully, let me try. Okay, there we go. All right, so let me go back.
Our cost per unit, fixed costs are.
Let me go back a little further. Okay, give me 1 second here. All right, that's probably about right. Let me know if you're able to hear now.
You have to throw some money at them. I thought that was good. On the road trip, I thought that was. How's it going? That's not bad.
All right, sorry. So it will start here in just 1 second. I don't want to. It's just he's going to get right into the case.
Let's move on then. Keep it real. Here is what I did this morning, knowing that Claude was going to perform pretty well. I asked it to build a 3-statement model, which is exactly what's required in the AFM program on the AFM exam. On the AFM exam, people are given a case study, but what I did is I copied, for this AFM test, I copied the case study into a sheet, so it looks messy, but normally you're given it as a PDF. It looks nice, but I just copied the data into the case here. You can see the case provides information, but this is the Henderson company. It's the one that we have publicly available. Often, it's a manufacturer of storage tanks. We've been given 3 years of historical data, most recently 2025, and then it says you've been asked to build a financial model for 2026 to 2030, and it provides information about the sales. It's all very, here's the thing, it's all embedded. It's all just embedded into one cell. It's not in different cells. It's in one piece of text. Average selling prices for the next 5 years, because that's how they would normally get it in a PDF. The capacity of the factory, the growth rates. We provided operating costs, variable and fixed, and I just have a text label that shows that the variable costs are cost per unit, fixed costs are in aggregate dollars millions. These are actual numbers, and then it tells you in a string that the SG&A, the selling general admin costs, are going to be 3.9 million. We've got some information on the capex and on the working cap, all embedded into pieces of text. Income taxes, debt, equity, other assumptions, and then there's instructions that say build a 5-year forecast model. And then the other sheet that I gave to Claude, which is what people get in real life, is this: 3 years of historical financial statements, the income statement, the cash flow statement, and the balance sheet. And that's it. And then what I did, and I'm going to show you my prompting. I'm going to show you my prompts. You can see it on the screen. This is what I did. I went to Claude and said, on the case tab, you've been provided with information about a company called Henderson. You've also been provided with 3 years of historical financial statements. Build a 5-year forecast model with all the required schedules. Now, I told it the schedules, right? I had to know that it needs a revenue schedule, cost, depreciation, tax, working capital, debt, and equity. So I knew that, and said, oh, by the way, there are instructions for you on the case sheet in B60 to B66. And then my mind was a bit blown. I'm not going to lie. It started saying, okay, it actually did things that the other agents didn't do. It started saying, okay, I got it. I'll start by reading all the data from both sheets. And then it started saying, I'm going to read this, I'm going to read that. Then it said, let me read the exact cell. Let me understand the cell positioning. Okay, I got it. Now I have an understanding of the data. And it literally went down and said, I've got the data. Let me look at some historical metrics. And I was watching it. It took about 2 minutes or 3 minutes to do all this. Say, here's my plan. I'm going to do it, structure it with an assumption sheet. It's new. I'm going to give you a base, best, and worst. I told it to build some scenarios with a base, best, and worst. I didn't tell it which variables to use. I said, use your judgment and choose reasonable variables that we should build for a base, best, and worst. That's what I said. It said, I'm going to build these schedules. These are the schedules. What do you think? And it said, these are my key assumptions that I'm, going to use. It said, I am going to build scenarios to have a best and a worst case around sales price, sales volume, and inflation. Now, that kind of blew my mind, because that's what we do. That's how we did it. I didn't tell it to do that. I just said, choose 3 variables, and it decided it would go plus and minus $50 for the.
So I think that's important to note, right? Those are the 3 they typically use in best practice, saying, hey, these are 3 variables you should use for scenario. As he mentioned, he didn't tell Claude to pick those 3. He just said, pick what you think makes sense. So it was smart enough to look at it and say, oh, hey, those are the 3 that make sense, and pick reasonable intervals, like, plus 1% for growth, best case 2% inflation, worst case 3, the units. And so that's really impressive. That's not something we were seeing early on that they did a very good job with these agent tools. So that's a vast improvement. Let's just keep going here.
Plus and minus 1%.
Feel free to ask questions as well. Put them in the chat, what you're thinking.
Should I proceed with this plan, or would you like any?
Would love it.
Like, no, that's good. That's good. So I literally said, please proceed. And then it went on for another 10 minutes. It took about 10 more minutes, so 15 in total. I was watching. It was talking to itself. It was building and talking to itself, building and talking to itself. And I will show you. And it was resizing. It says, now let me build this tab. Now let me, I'm not going to go through all of it. Now let me do this. Now I'm doing that. And it walked
I'll
me
fast
through what
forward
it was
this
doing
just
step
a
by step.
little
It started
bit,
from the
and we'll
case.
get to
I'll get rid of the Claude prompt here.
the
It
file
did an
here.
assumption page. It's not the prettiest assumption page that you'll ever see, but it's pretty good. It would be very easy to clean it up. It used blue as the default font. It's got inflation. It's got tax rates. It's got the differential between government and.
Okay, I'm going to pause for 1 second here. I see a couple questions. So Wayne asked, does Claude for Excel seem to use the correct columns consistently? I'll be honest, I haven't tested it enough, but from what I've seen, what I'm hearing, yes, it's much better. Now, it was consistent here. I haven't tested it on enough different cases to say, but it appears it's much better there, is what I will say. And then Adnan, yes, I'm going to drop the link for the session. I'll put it up here on the screen in just a minute for anyone who wants to watch this episode, the full episode.
Counting earnings. It has a sales volume. This cell interested me. This cell fascinated me. The historical sales volume, because that's not in the case. We did not give it that. In order to derive that, you have to calculate that based on the revenue data and the pricing data in the historical year. But it's put a number in here. It obviously built a calculation and stuck a value, and now it's very, very close to what we had. It's 99% of the way there, but it figured that out. It's got sales volumes. It's got gross sales prices. It's got kind of all the assumptions here looking pretty good. CapEx.
So that's the link
reasonable
for
working
anybody who
capital
wants to watch.
and then it built the scenarios here. Look what it did. It showed for the base case, it's got the sales price, sales volume, and inflation for the base case. It figured out to pull these numbers out of that one cell that was typed in as a sentence. It pulled them out.
Agree, Amir.
Base, it figured out to add $50 for the best case and then to take off $50 for the worst case. So my point is, I can now see that on a few occasions it has made calculations like this one here, and it has made calculations around a best case and a worst case, but just typed in the numbers. So I know that it calculated it. It entered the value, fine. Then it's deriving the live case by using a simple if statement. So probably not the function that most people would use. It's using a simple if statement.
So not the cleanest with the if statement, like you mentioned, but look at that. It's doing live scenario. This is really impressive. This was all within 10 minutes. Keep that in mind.
Looking at B7. B7 is the switch.
And this is a case
simple if statement.
4 hours.
Not a big deal. It's working.
Humans get 4 hours to solve it.
That's the assumptions. And then the model is here. Again, the formatting is not perfect, but the functionality is excellent. It's got links, so it built revenue schedule.
So I'm going to take a minute. I like to address some of these comments throughout, and then we'll get back to it. Impressive. So maybe the human opportunity is on smaller, messier companies that need a context and data. We are definitely moving towards prompt engineering by departments. Yes, we're definitely moving that way. But you still got to understand what you're doing. You still got to validate the formulas. You got to validate the assumptions. I mean, how many of us really wanted to spend all our time building? And there still be complex cases we need to build. So this is not, at least today, this is not, hey, our jobs are all going away. I'm not going to be that doom and gloom guy. Are some jobs going to go away? I've been saying all along some jobs will go away and new jobs will be created. Happened with the internet, happened with the steam engine, happened with every major invention in society. Now, if we get to AGI, all bets are off. I'm heading to the mountains. You can come join me as a hermit. All right. Wayne, I haven't used it on VBA, but I would expect it to be better than Copilot or ChatGPT because the Claude 4.6 model is better in general. I will say it also has a PowerPoint add-in, and it can work across multiple files, and it can work across your open Excel file and move things over to PowerPoint. So it's Claude 4.6 is impressive. I need more time to test it. I've been doing a lot of talking in events, but everything I'm hearing is wow.
And it linked it. It built a cost schedule and it linked it. The net income is very, very close to the net incomes that we have in our solution. Didn't love this. It's still using blue. The net income is linked, but it did not apply formula coloring black. It's using blue, but it's still
a skill sheet might fix that.
But it's got the right.
I would think it would
properly. It's got the cash flows. And you can see there's some rows here where the formatting's not ideal. I'll come back to that. The balance sheet is built up. It's mostly links. It's working well. Not as beautiful as we would like, but it's actually working.
Important point to note, the balance sheet are now balancing. 6 months ago, none of them were balancing. Some would get close, but they all had issues. We even had one tool literally tell us it's okay if the balance sheet doesn't balance. It doesn't need to balance. We got
And
just
it's
a few
balanced.
more
You
minutes
can
here.
see it is
to finish
balanced
this
every
one.
single year, and it does not have a plug, unlike the other tool we tested.
So
Giles,
on the bank debt revolver, is that working properly?
I'll show you where it's working. It is. So I was wondering where it was. So look at this, though. Look at this, guys. It's amazing. It figured out to do a revenue schedule. It took the historical volumes, and then it took the volume forecast. It's made this green when you're linking to assumptions. It used green. It understood that there's a gross selling price, a net for freight and warehousing, and then it calculated the net revenue, and then it calculated the revenue as the gross revenue as gross price times the sales volume. It calculated the freight and warehousing. It did this beautifully. What I was most impressed is it actually understood how to calculate the costs, variable and fixed. It understood that a variable cost has to grow at inflation on a unit basis, so that these two variable costs are growing at inflation on a unit basis. And then it calculated the total variable cost here by taking the total variable cost per unit, multiplying it by the number of units. That blew my mind because that was just stuck into some text and in a table, and it arrived at total cost. So it did a great job here. Again, I don't love that it's linking back, but these are fixable things, that it's, building formulas, linking to another sheet, but it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what it's done here. Working capital, it made some reasonable assumptions. It's built the formulas, and then I'll show you what it did on debt. On the debt, it has the term loan at the very top. It actually built in functionality so that it doesn't overpay the debt. It has the revolver. Now, I was curious because when I came to the revolver, the important revolver calculation is actually coming from above. So I'll show that to you. But it's doing interest. I didn't even look at this yet. It calculated interest on the average. It's calculating, and we know that is a common methodology of calculating interest. I'm actually trying to see where it did. Oh, the interest on the revolver. Oh, wow. It calculated interest on the average for the term loan.
So great question, Dom. Relative to what was just mentioned to variable cost, could Claude do the same for hosting costs for cost of revenue to an extent? I would expect yes. Play with it. I mean, I haven't tested it on that, but from everything I'm hearing from people and the stuff it's solving, it probably could. Might have to work with it a little bit. The only way you're going to know is by trying. So I don't know, but I do think so. All right, let's keep going here. Welcome,
okay,
Keisha.
that will never create circularity, but it calculated interest on the opening balance for the revolver in order to avoid circularity, I think. And it did the same thing for the cash balance. And what it did with the revolver is it's linking it above to row 58. And so where it did the work, Paul, was here. So I don't love that, but it's fine. It built a big formula on the cash flow statement. On the cash flow statement, it used an if statement. No one's going to love the way this looks, but it's actually generally directionally fine. We like to kind of break everything out step by step, but it's basically saying if all these cash flows together are less than zero, then we have to borrow. Otherwise, it will repay. And it appears to be working. I did not dissect it perfectly. But as I say, I was pretty blown away. This took 15 minutes. I could spend another hour or half an hour and clean it up and check it. I'm checking one more thing here. I asked it to set up, one of the instructions was to set up print ranges. It did not do that. It did not set up headers and footers and print ranges, even though we
can't get it all.
But I think you would agree. I'm going to stop and let you guys comment on what you see. This is nothing like what we have seen in prior tools, guys.
So yeah, I saw something very similar. I said I kind of tested it on Henderson as well. The only
You
difference
go
I
back
had in,
4
I don't
minutes.
know whether you tried, was I just imported the PDF. So it did a similar job, just importing all the information from the PDF rather than putting it explicitly in the model.
I did that with the CFM.
Yeah,
the
no,
second
yeah,
level version.
and it does it, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
gets.
I'll show you. Let me just show everybody. I mean, if I go to open
The
up
other observation I was just going to say was, even though we know these tools aren't understanding in the same conscious way like a human understands, the degree to which it's getting some of those modeling nuances right, like the min for the amortization payments for the debt and stuff like that, it just feels like it's at another level of getting these things right. Like that's like a modeler's brain coming across in the output, which is amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Here, where most people wouldn't do this. Most people would just have a $25 million amortization. It built in the backstop to say, well, wait a second.
I want to show the
it should
one
only be the
mistake.
minimum
It did
of
make
that
a
25
mistake.
or
You'll see here in a
the
minute.
beginning balance here, because we never want to overpay. So yeah, I agree with you. It was pretty mind blowing. So, and as I said, the 5-year forecast was pretty much spot on, very similar to what we did in ours. Paul, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I mean, it's very impressive. The testing I did on Henderson was more, hey, just take the 3 years of data and build me a model. And it did good. I did it with a different tool that was using Claude 4.6, and it did a really good job. This is even better than I would have expected from what I've seen. But yeah, it's incredible how far it's come.
I mean, it's unbelievable. As we go down the balance sheet, as we go down, it adheres to all the principles we talk about, right? Just links, no big formulas, right? It understood how to link up cash and cash equivalents to the cash flow statement. It understands how to link receivables, inventory, and prepaids to the working capital down below. It is just flatlining prepaid expenses. It knows that that's okay. It's got a total here. It's calculating the net PP&E directly in the cell, which is just fine. And it's flatlining other, right? That's perfect. It is linking the bank revolver to the debt schedule below. Same with the payables. So everything is, if I knew that deferred taxes has got to be cumulative, but again, I'm recognizing that I'm able to check this and understand it because I know modeling. And by the way, I will, so again, I love this. I love it can do it. But just so everyone who's watching understands, I am not suggesting you shouldn't know modeling. You need to, because you still need to understand what it's doing. I'll tell the quick story to the viewers here. I was talking just by sheer coincidence 2 days ago with the head of finance at a big finance organization here where I'm based. And he has been an early adopter of Claude. He was on the beta group. So he's been using Claude in Excel for many months, since October. And he's been putting hours and hours into building and using it and refining it. And I asked him point blank, I said, would you agree with this statement? Do you agree that the only reason you are able to use Claude so effectively to build models is because you already know how to build models yourself? And he said 100%. I'm only able to do this because I already understand and know model building. He said, oh my gosh, the idea that someone is going to do this who does not understand modeling is scary and is going to lead to issues and problems. Because I promise you, anyone watching, I promise you, even if you're going to use Claude to get you this far, you guys can agree with this, you will be in a boardroom one day with a client sitting right beside you. And the client's going to say, change this, modify that. Can you add this in? Can you change that? And you might be offline. The internet might go down, or which happens all the time, or you might not have the ability for Claude to spend 5 or 10 minutes. Like, you might have to make very quick changes on the fly, and you will look very, very deficient and cause a lot of concern if you can't do it. So I really think it's important to understand what's going on here. But as I said, was blown away by this. So let's any other comments, and then I'll quickly show the CFM case. What do you guys? Anything else?
I'm ready to see CFM. I'm invested now.
I think I'm ready to take the CFM now if I can use Claude.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll be able to. So exactly. Well, then again, just before we even wrap, I mean, even so impressed, it understood from one sentence in our.
Here's where it made a
there's
mistake. So
earnings
watch
differential
this.
between the EBT that gets reported on the accounting financial statements, which is this earning row, and what we tell it in the case is that we say assumes very simplistically that earnings for government purposes are going to be $5 million less. That's all we say, right? I think it's right here. We simply say, and for a lot of people, this doesn't make they don't understand this. We tell people the tax rate is 35%, and we say the aggregate reduction in government pre-tax earnings due to timing differences is expected to be $5 million per year for the next 5 years. We don't give it any more instruction. We just said that. And yet it understood, oh, okay, if government earnings is going to be $5 million less, then I guess it understood that the accounting tax is going to be the earnings times the tax rate. It also put a max function there, which is actually not correct because that value can go negative. An accounting tax number can go negative, whereas it's
so there's one mistake.
That's actually not correct. You can have, and I know this because I know model, you can have negative $45 million of accounting earnings, which should display a negative total tax number on your financial statements. So that's a mistake. I just saw that. Claude shouldn't be doing that. But again, that's because I understand how this is working. But it did know that. This one, it should have restricted. It understood that the differential, that the deferred tax expense would be the tax rate multiplied by the earnings differential. That number can't ever go negative. It then took the difference to get to the cash tax number, the current tax. This value technically can't go negative. So it restricted this one. That's fine. It put a maximum function here, but there is a small subtle error that this one should not have been restricted, right? So in theory, if this was negative 45, then in theory, I'm just doing this on the fly, the accounting expense should have been whatever it was. The current number would have been 0, but the deferred tax should have been the differential. So it's not quite there. This should have been a negative deferred tax expense, which would have been reducing a lot.
All right, I think that's good. I think we get the idea. Amir, totally agree. He says it's remarkable how quickly we can achieve a comprehensive overview that serves as a solid foundation for our work. But as In pointed out, and this is the message I want to drive home, and I'll share an example here in a minute. So I'm going to come back to the deck. And, despite how amazing this is, and trust me, I'm amazed, we still have to know what we're doing. You can't trust the output without review. You need to know the fundamentals. If you don't know how to build a 3-statement model, if you don't know the Excel formulas and functions well, I would still recommend invest the time, learn Power Query. Then AI becomes an awesome magnifier. If you know what you're doing well, you could save hours. But notice what that person said. He was one of the early beta testers of Claude. Goes 100%. I was able to do a lot more because I knew well what I was doing. So here's kind of my final takeaway thoughts, and then I'm going to share one thing in Excel that gets to an example of what I mean by more complex formulas. At present, I still say all finance professionals, here's what I say now, I've changed this over the last week, should be testing and working with agents. Ideally one that has Claude 4.6, maybe Claude 4.5 if you can't get 6. If you have weak, and that should have been misspelled that well, weak Excel or modeling skills, master the fundamentals so you can get the most out of AI. You want great modeling? FMI, Chris Riley, Carolina Lago, reach out to me. You want to improve your Excel skills? I offer my course. I'll share that at the end. Invest more. Yes, and as Ian says, I'm still perfecting my modeling skills. This has been made super easy with Claude. Yes, it has become easier. But make sure you're able to validate everything, because if you don't know it well enough to validate, it's a matter of time. A 2% error rate is going to catch up with you quicker than you think. So that would be my caution, but agree. All right. So anyone wants any of my resources, they're there. I will let me share a little bit in an Excel file here real quick. So I mentioned earlier, and let me make this larger. So one thing you'll see a lot of in Excel, and let me just fix one thing here. This was on my other computer, so it didn't size quite the way I wanted. So let's take a simple timeline. We've all built a timeline for a model. Here's the way probably many of us are doing it. We're either putting the first date or linking to an input. The model starts here. We link everything up, right? We drag it across. All right, that works fine. That's not how I would expect, and I should have done, sorry. We do the second one with the end date. So we have a formula here. We drag it all across. We could have set the first one as an end date too, to here if we wanted, and made it that day. But you get the idea. So that's often what we see for traditional model. All right, you can see all the formulas there. Now, what we're seeing more and more with dynamic arrays is a dynamic model. So let me just freeze my pane here. Bring this down. We see model 2. If I change this to 28 months, outside of the formatting, and why did that not do what I wanted? Oh, because I'm on example 1. Example 2, notice now it goes out the extra months. Yes, I have to fix the formatting, but it's dynamic. It automatically does that. Now, what we're starting to see with these agents is they go a step further, which is cool, but it means you have to learn it, right? This formula is fairly easy. It's an E date with a sequence. This one's simple. It's a year, spilled year. Month, spilled, quarter with a roundup. This might be the most, this and the sequence one might be the most complex in here, but all it's doing is saying, hey, give me the quarter, and then this formula is giving me the actual quarter. You're just rounding up the month divided by 3. Still relatively simple, and then you're concatenated together if you want quarter and year. So that's a great timeline at the top of the model, right? We've all seen something similar. Here is what you'll start seeing agents do. And so, understanding this, so look at this formula here, and I'll show it down below. It's using a let and declaring every single variable and then doing the calculation at the end. What I want you to notice is this whole thing, including the headlines, all of that is one formula. It all lives in one cell. Who wants to have to, if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know it well, try auditing something like that. There's the formula. And I can, I'll send this spreadsheet out to everybody who signed up for the event so you can see it, but it's using lets a lot more. Let is a great formula when you learn how to use it. I feel like I'm finally getting comfortable with let. So even I'm a Microsoft MVP, it's one that hasn't been easy for me. So I'm not saying this will be simple, but it's the type of thing we're starting to see. And so what you're doing is you're just declaring variables for everything. So the start date is a variable, the months in the model. The date is a variable that references the earlier variable to calculate it. Year references the earlier variable. Month references the earlier variable, as does quarter. and quarter year. And then you have your calculation part, which is this part right here. You're now saying combine it all together. Instead of having to write 6 formulas with these statements, I'm going to combine it all to one, stack it together, and I have this nice dynamic timeline with labels that lives in one cell. Now, you could argue, hey, that's not best practice. You shouldn't do all that in one cell. I wouldn't necessarily disagree. But AI often does that kind of thing because it's just Carl Seidman commented about this, I think, on a LinkedIn post yesterday. He goes, yeah, what I'm seeing is that it really likes to use let. And so that's why I say you need to develop and invest more time in your Excel skills, in your modeling, being able to validate. That example in shared, the deferred income tax. If you didn't know how that worked and you didn't realize it could go negative in one case and the other it couldn't, that could be wrong in the model. And then later on, someone's like, why are we so far off on taxes? We're right on revenue, but we're way off on these numbers. Oh, the model was wrong, which we deal with now as humans. Let's be honest, right? But there's something different when we say, I didn't catch it, the machine screwed up. Your boss will be like, no, you screwed up because you didn't validate it. So I'm going to pause here for a minute. And before I wrap up, I just want to open it up to questions that people have. And I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint for a minute, share something, and we'll wrap up. So give you a couple minutes to ask questions. That's mainly what I had. I have one more thing I'll share here in about 2-3 minutes, but give you a chance to ask questions. And while we're waiting, I'll tell an Excel joke. What do you say when you make a mistake in Excel? Anyone know what you say when you make a mistake in Excel? You say, oh, sheet. All right. We'll give it another minute or two here for questions, and then we'll wrap up. I don't think it's a processing thing. It's just, it's been trained on a ton of material. And I think it thinks more like a programmer. And many programmers would use a formula like that, wanting to solve it in one case, kind of that type of thing. Also, I don't know if it's trained to use more recent data, which, Excel more recently has been much more dynamic arrays and moving to allowing you to program in the tool. So I'll be honest, I don't know the full reasons, but I do know sometimes the reason it uses complex is it tries to solve for every use case, even though that's not necessary. An example we gave is we had it parsing something out, and it was doing a replace and adding like 60 blank spaces at the end. And what we found out is that was because it had been trained on a blog that said, hey, to prevent, cutting off anything, do this to add plenty of space. None of it was needed. And so it way over-engineered the formula to try to solve for every use case. Yes, it should be able to, especially if your model is well structured. You might have to tell it the first time, but give it a try. I think it can. A simple one like that. When it gets more complex, you're changing 5 or 10 things, but just changing your hiring. I've given it headcount schedules. I see no reason it couldn't do that. I haven't directly tested that use case, Alexi, but I believe a good agent would be able to do that. I think they've been, depending on how well structured your model is, because in theory, all you should have to do is either change your quantity if you're hiring by role, you tell it the role and changes the quantity, or adding 2 new people. Now, keep in mind, for most models, a well-designed model, especially if you're basing it on quantity and an average salary, all I got to go do is type 5 instead of 3. So did AI really save me time? So it just depends. Correct, Adnan. They use chain of thoughts for reasoning. And so it's probabilistic. It's not deterministic. They're telling you what they think based on probabilities, what you want to know. That's why they're more prone to errors versus if I give Excel the exact same inputs every time for a formula, I'm going to get the exact same answer. Machine learning algorithms, if I give it all the exact same values, I'm going to get the same answer. That's not true with generative AI. Yes, you can customize prompts. I found it so-so when I tell it not to use complex formulas. I haven't done a lot of that with 4.6 yet, but in general, it doesn't always follow the guidance. But correct, that's why they're adding skill sheets. That's why we're doing all these things, and the instructions will get better. Right now, I'd say that's an area I think has room for improvement based on my limited testing. Mostly with prior to 4.6 on that topic, I haven't been impressed. But I agree with you, Amir, that they will continue to work on that and improve. Keep in mind, we're 6 months into Excel agents. Think where Claude coding was a year ago to where it is now. It's much better, and agents are going to get much better. So even though we took a huge leap forward, the best is still ahead of us. All right, so I'm not seeing any more comments, so I'm just going to throw this up here. As everybody knows, I run my own business full time, and I do this because I love it. But it does this meeting right here doesn't pay the bills, and so I am going to take a minute and promote. If you don't want to hear it, you can always just terminate me. You don't have to listen. But I do offer my FP&A Ultimate Course Bundle. I'm getting ready to release my data visualization course. I've already recorded it all. It's just being edited and will be out in Q1. I also have a business partnering, some basic modern modeling design, data analysis, modern Excel. One of the best parts is with that bundle, which won't stay at this price, is you get all future courses I release. $129. If you use the code webinar, you get 30% off for this week. If you want to improve your Excel skills, learn some basics of Power Query, Excel tables, dynamic arrays, that course is only $60. Yes, as in Claude can be used for forecasting. You could ask it to use Python and help write some forecasting models. You could have it to help you do Monte Carlo. Pretty much anything we can do, and it can be done in Excel. It should be able to at least try something. How good it will be, experiment is what I'll say. So those are 2 courses. Would love for some of you to sign up. Would really appreciate it. I continue to do these, every week free, and you get a lot of great content. But I also have my courses out there. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap there. I will send that dynamic timeline file to everybody who joined. And I really appreciate you guys attending today. I appreciate that. Amir saying it was excellent. Wayne, thank you. Appreciate you being a thought leader in this space. And so again, thank you everybody for attending. If you haven't joined me on LinkedIn, you haven't signed up for my newsletter, please go to my website and do that. Would love to have you on there. And exciting times. Start testing these agents and email me. Let me know what you found. We can all learn together. The reality is this is early. None of us have all the answers. If anyone tells you they're an AI expert and they've only been doing it since Gen AI, how much of an expert are you in a couple years? But thanks for joining, Daryl. Appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate y'all joining. I'll hang on for another minute or just a couple minutes in case anyone else has questions, but we'll let everybody go. I'll stay on for another 2-3 minutes. And if anyone has a question, feel free to ask. And if you get a chance, please check out the full episode on the Mod Squad. I think it's worth watching. You can see it solve an advanced case. You can see the deferred revenue schedule example and just more of the thoughts we share. Thank you so much for all the comments. Really appreciate it. And I'll hang on for about 3 more minutes here till 5 after, and then I'm just going to go ahead and terminate this. So if anyone has a question, Give you another minute or two to ask it, even though we're a little over. But if you need to drop, I won't be offended. Or maybe a little, but I won't tell you. So we'll see if any other questions come in. One more Excel joke. Let's see. What does every newborn spreadsheet need? What does every newborn spreadsheet need? Formula. Ta-ting. How do you know when something's a dad joke? It's a parent. See, I'm a parent. Get it? A parent. All right. I'll be here all night with the jokes. We got 2 more minutes. I'm not seeing any questions, but I'll hang in. I'll keep quiet. If there's anything that comes, I'll answer it, and then we'll end this. You're welcome, Amir, Lean, Lana, Barb, Kevin, Lo. I think I've covered everybody. All the thank yous. Let's see. Rodrigo, LinkedIn user, whoever you are, you're welcome. Yep, take care, Rodrigo. Like I said, time to leave. Haha. All right, thanks for joining. And I'll just so everybody knows, if you're still around, I'm going to start doing more and more on AI every 2 weeks. Still cover general Excel stuff, still very important, but I'm going to start shifting a little bit more to AI and try to share some different use cases and things I'm seeing, because I think it's important for all of us. All right, got about 30 seconds left. As Amir says, keep smiling. When it hits 35, I'm going to hang up on you all. I asked my dad if he knew Excel. What did he say, Kevin? You're the last word here before I end the call. I figured that. I figured it was something like that. Yeah, some. Nice, Kevin. What did the data analyst put in his hair? Some product. Get it? All right. Thanks, everyone.